legal system that said, well, it was never meant to be overly rigid. It has to be adaptable. We have to adapt it to modern times. Even today, I was on an interview, and we were talking about economy, and I said, well, the economy was pretty good without a central bank back in the 19th century. I don't want to talk about that. That's old-fashioned. We don't even want to go back to that. But we do have to recognize that markets work and foreign policy works, and going backwards is not the problem. What we want to do is pick up the pieces. We had a good system. We knew what we had. It's to quit doing the dumb things, because it's so easy to figure out that living within our means as individuals, we have to do it, and government should have to do it. The politicians should be held responsible. But the big question is, really, the question that always has to be asked, and you have to get the right answer, is, what should the role of government be? And government's been around for a long, long time, and government's always overstaffed. But if the government would be what the Constitution says it should be very limited to the protection of liberty. If you want more government, it should be local and not at the federal level. Certainly, it should be international. It should be of Congress and by the people. I certainly heard it. It really hurt to hear people so often say right after 9/11, well, it looks like we have to sacrifice our freedoms now to be safe. And, the truth is you take an oath of office and you take an oath to be a president, you don't swear an oath, I'm going to keep the American people safe from here on out. That is, matter of fact, you start on that means I am going to keep you safe and you'll have no more liberty. That's the only way you can be perfectly safe. No, you want to obey the law, and you want to protect life, liberty, and property, and not much else. A judicial system. But we had given up on this 100 years ago. But the magnificent story is now that it's been much more than I ever expected in these last 4 or 5 years. There's been a tremendous surge in the interest of this. I mean, just say a whole new generation of young people right now are joining us. I mean, a lot of us have been fighting this for a long time, and we've always been outnumbered. But if we can keep this energy going with the younger generation, and I'm not talking about the college graduate, I'm talking about the college student and the high school student. A high school student, he says, I've been reading Mises and Hayek and Rothbard. I haven't even heard those names until I got out of college. Now, the people I meet from the younger generation are way ahead of anybody I ever met when I was in high school and college. But the needs are much greater. There was a lot of wealth left. There was a lot of momentum, and we've been consuming it for now several decades. There is no real wealth in this country. What you see as wealth, most of it is debt. The dollar functions, but the dollar is debt. So it doesn't have a real value, but the trust in the dollar is still there. So there is always a subjective element on value. There's still a thought around the world, well, the Americans have all the weapons and they have a lot of wealth. We're going to take their dollars and that sort of thing. But it could come to an end. Matter of fact, the last 4 days since Bernanke announced, this QE, continuous QE, the dollar's gone down sharply. And with this stuff going on over in the Middle East, as well as the oil prices going up and all, we could be getting pretty close to this. This stuff in the Middle East really dramatized. I guess you've seen on TV some of the maps now. They will paint each country in red and had some revolt or rebellion and demonstration against America in the last week. And there are 11 countries right now. And they want to tell you this because somebody, someplace, did a video that nobody has seen and nobody understands, and they say, oh, that's why they hate Americans. Well, guess what? It's all in the Arab countries that we have been taken over. We prop up the dictators. We're on both sides of all those issues. We prop up dictators like in Egypt, give them billions and billions of dollars and pay them to be friends of Israel. And then all of a sudden the people rebel against that government. And so we participate in the overthrow of our puppet leader in Egypt. And then somebody else comes in, and lo and behold, guess who's in the rebellion? The Al-Qaeda. So the Al-Qaeda is in Libya as well, and they're involved in Syria. They weren't in Iraq, but they are now. I mean, the whole thing about the foreign policy makes no sense whatsoever. We spend all that money, we're less safe, and that can get out of hand. There's a lot of planning done on how to manage and spread our empire. And they don't sit down and say, well, let's have a world war. But sometimes some of those plans get out of control. What I fear the most is a false flag. Something happening where one of our ships goes down, or there's a plane goes down, and of course it had to be the Iranians, for sure, for certain. But who knows? But then the emotions run high. Even today, when our ambassador was killed, I mean, there's a lot of people ready to go to war over this, and never asking the serious questions. But I am convinced that if we have a sensible foreign policy, we would have more friends in the world. Yeah. Understand, nor does he care about this great thing called American exceptionalism. That we are the greatest and the best, and we can tell people what to do. Well, we could be the greatest, and we could be the best, and we've had a lot of good traits in the past. But the one thing that we, as a people, have to come to realize that if we have good traits, then we do a good job, have a good economy, a sound money, and a sensible foreign policy, and mind our own business. Guess what? Others might want to copy us. They might want to emulate us. Right now, there's not much effort in that. I am also concerned if there's a false flag and things break out. What's going to happen is we'll go bankrupt at the same time. And if you think the map right now of those 11 countries expressing their anger toward us, I think there's going to be a lot more who have been held in check because we've had weaponry and we've had money. And my complaint has always been that we've only had two options in foreign policy. One, you do what we tell you, we'll give you a lot of money. Or if you don't do it, we're going to give you a lot of bombs. Right now, we're doing both. In some of these countries, we're shooting them at one time, and at the same time, we're giving them money. And why don't we offer this other one based on the Constitution of Liberty? Why don't we offer neither? Just offer friendship and trade, no money and no bombs. That's it. Conservatives defending one part of it, liberals another part of it, and then it's also mixed up by even the conservatives who might be pretty good on economics. If they get a president that's not so conservative, they have to go along with it because it's a partisan thing. And then you'll have it on the other side. You might have a president supposed to cut back on arresting people for marijuana and also have less war, and he defies it. But then the Democrats say, oh, we can't challenge him at all. What we have to do is challenge people and say, look, when a conservative says the right thing about economics and a liberal or somebody else says something right about civil liberties and, getting the government out of our personal lives, or anybody would say, a foreign policy that makes sense, and we have coalitions in Congress now, because there are less Democrats because we have a current Democrat president, the coalition is smaller, but the numbers of the Republicans are growing. In this coalition of saying, we don't need it. So this is, again, once again, bringing people together and seeing liberty as a whole is one piece, and I think that's what we have to do. They'll accuse us of wanting to go back to the Dark Ages, but the Dark Ages is authoritarianism. Freedom is a relatively new idea. The history of man, when you consider the history of the universe, how many billions of years that the planets and all existed, man has only been around for a short period of time, and knowledgeable man is just in terms of thousands of years when they were reflecting and writing books. So it's very short. But the history of man making great progress and understanding how important liberty is very, very short. In terms of all history, it's just a couple seconds or a couple minutes. And so we're really just on the cusp of understanding, what this is all about and what it can bring about. There's only one principle that has to be followed, because our views and our desires and our preferences are all different. Is you can't force other people to do your bidding if they're not hurting. A lot of people will accept that. It's easier to get to accept, just don't hurt me or don't steal my property. But then they say it's okay for the government to do it. The government's not allowed to initiate force against anybody either. They can only be a participant in trying to repel force or settle disputes. But they can't come along and say, well, we're going to use force to make other people do their bidding, even if the individual should do it. So it's individuals and government that should never be able to initiate force or violence against another one to bring about social or economic change. That one rule would solve our problems, I'll tell you. We should be very optimistic. I know there are some who say, we should have done better, in the campaign. Quite frankly, I think we did pretty good. Those who say that we should have done significantly better, I don't know whether they quite understand what we as a group are taking on. I mean, it isn't like we're taking on one small faction of the Republican Party and saying, yeah, we want to nudge you a little bit more conservative or something like that. I mean, we're taking on the establishment that controls both parties. It's the welfare state, it's the military-industrial complex, it's a lot of corporatism and subsidies that go out to so many. So I say that the task is rather large, so the success, I think, is very significant. But the other way you might look at it, if you're looking for a positive sign, I don't know how many candidates there were in the first 4 years ago. Let's say there were 12, let's say there were 10 or 12, it's not so. There were about 20. There weren't very many that came in second. There were a few that dropped by the wayside that didn't make an impact, and they're done and gone, and they have debt in the bank, and they don't even pay their bill. The real excitement is the numbers of people who are joining us, and that's where we should be positive. We have so many more people now, in office at all levels of government, and there'll be a lot more added this fall. Now we can't. That isn't a total measurement, but it is a significant measurement. There's some people, that love liberty and fight for it, and write about it, and say, this voting stuff doesn't add up to much. But political activism, if it had been ignored by the founders, we would still be in a pretty big mess, because they were philosophical and they were idealistic, but they took political action too. So that's why I think political action is quite a lot. thank you for all that you have done. Continue to do your work and do your job. And then people say, well, what is my job? You decide what your job is. You just have, the only thing I can urge you to do is understand the principles, understand the principles of liberty. But you're here, you're a participant, you're involved, and we have people representing us in different levels of government. But everybody has something to do. It can be purely educational. It can be, when people come in to the office and ask, a lot of times they want to say, how do I become a congressman? I say, don't even try. It's okay if it happens to come along. Most of it's luck and this sort of thing. But there's a lot of uncertainties about running for office, and there is some luck in it. But a lot of times I encourage them to, if they're very interested, I would just love to see more in the media, more writers, more in the newspapers. That's getting easier, because right now, if you look at the number of people who look at CNN for their news, most people are now getting more news off their internet and off their computers than they are out of CNN. So we're already... And everybody has different talents. Some people don't even want to do public speaking. Some people enjoy it. Some people want to run for office. Some people actually have a knack, even under these circumstances, they can make money in this economy. Well, let them go make the money and let them help out the other groups, And we have a lot of supporters that way, and that's their prime goal is they do well and understand it, they make money, and they donate to these organizations. So that is pretty important. Once you discover what's going on and you basically understand this philosophy, actually it's a pretty uncomfortable position to put you in, because I hope you're miserable the rest of your life unless you're trying to do something about it. I do believe that people who are informed, that they're a moral person, and they say, we know this is a bad situation, and if you're directed by wanting to know the truth and spread the truth, and it's a moral principle, you do have a greater obligation. And you know what? You're in a group that's only going to be probably the group that's about 10% of the population, because you know the issues, you understand, you study, and you read. But most people, even those who vote, they don't think about it until the day before the election sometime. All these polling on who's going to win in November, I think it's all talk, because there'll probably a bunch of people who aren't going to pay much attention, and who knows, there might be something else to do that day. They might not even show up, for that matter. But it is, your role is very important, and that's why I work very hard and encourage all the team on the Campaign for Liberty to be involved. Well, I'm glad you're here and want to assume, some responsibility. And of course, if you don't have any fun doing it, it can be a real dull job. So have some fun doing it. And one thing that is fun, though, is being with like-minded people. Yeah. With people that are like-minded, that might have a completely different attitude about what their social values are and what they want to do with their money and how they want to do, because I can just sort of smile and say, I wouldn't do that. That's a pretty stupid thing to do. I think it's still neat that we can bring these people together and say, it's freedom, it's liberty, that's what we're fighting for. Thank you very much.